November 8, 1942, Sidi Farouk Beach, Algeria. The first American infantry units waded ashore during Operation Torch, carrying with them a weapon that few had ever seen and even fewer understood. Inside wooden crates marked secret were 5,000 newly issued M1 rocket launchers, a strange device soon to earn a name that would echo across battlefields: the Bazooka. To the soldiers unpacking them, these were nothing more than mysterious steel tubes. There were no instructions, no training, no hint that this crude contraption would change the nature of armored warfare forever. Within 2 years, the bazooka would force the mighty German army to rethink its tank strategies, ignite frantic efforts to copy the design, and turn ordinary foot soldiers from tank prey into tank hunters. The story of the bazooka began months earlier at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland. On May 6, 1942, Colonel Leslie Skinner and Lieutenant Edward Ewell were ordered to present a series of experimental anti-tank weapons before a skeptical panel of generals. The British were developing massive spigot mortars, heavy, crew-served weapons weighing over 100 pounds. But Ewell brought something radically different and astonishingly simple. That very morning, he had built his prototype from scrap. He found a length of steel tubing in a junk pile, by luck, the perfect diameter, bent a coat hanger into makeshift sights, and taped it all together. The generals barely looked at it, focusing instead on the complex machines they expected to win their approval. When the test began, 5 spigot mortars fired at a moving M3 Stuart tank from 150 yards. Not a single round found its target. The weapons were heavy, clumsy, and slow. Then Ewell stepped forward. Fearing the backblast might be dangerous, he donned a welder's mask, shouldered the tube, aimed through his crude wire sights, and squeezed the trigger. The rocket hissed out, a streak of fire and smoke, and slammed directly into the tank's side. He reloaded in seconds, fired again, and scored another hit. General Barnes, head of research and engineering, chuckled at the sight of the odd-looking launcher. "Looks like Bob Burns's bazooka," he joked, referring to the comedian's famous musical horn. The name stuck. More importantly, Barnes ordered 5,000 of the new weapons into immediate production. What followed was one of the fastest transitions from prototype to mass production in U.S. military history. By October 1942, General Electric and several contractors were manufacturing 5,000 launchers a month. Each required just 20 pounds of steel, basic welding, and simple electrical parts. The cost? A mere $25 per launcher and $8 per rocket. A seamless steel tube, 54 inches long, weighing only 13 pounds, yet capable of punching through 4 inches of armor at 300 yards. At Fort Benning, Captain Franklin Johnson later wrote that a soldier could be trained to use the bazooka in one afternoon. By contrast, mastering the 37mm anti-tank gun took weeks. The new launcher was light, portable, and deadly, something 2 infantrymen could carry wherever their squad went. For the first time, they possessed a weapon that gave them confidence against tanks. But during the landings of Operation Torch, that confidence was nowhere to be found. The night before the invasion, Eisenhower himself discovered that the secret crates of bazookas had never even been opened. Soldiers weren't allowed to break the seals until combat began. So when the shooting started, men had to figure them out on the fly, under fire, with no manuals, no training, and rockets that had been damaged by salt water. The 509th Parachute Infantry reported that out of their first 20 rockets, only 7 worked. And yet, amid the confusion and chaos, there were flashes of success. On November 10th, the 1st Armored Division claimed the weapon's first kills. 2 French Renault tanks destroyed near Port Lyautey. The bazooka had proven its worth, just barely. The Germans, however, would not take long to understand what the Americans had unleashed. During the Battle of Kasserine Pass in February 1943, Rommel's Afrika Korps overran American lines and captured intact launchers, along with boxes of ammunition. Within days, the captured weapons were shipped to Germany for analysis. Engineers immediately recognized their brilliance. Technical reports in March praised the launcher's low weight, simple construction, and impressive armor penetration. By September 1943, the German version, the 88mm Raketenpanzerbüchse 43, soon to be known as the Panzerschreck, entered production. It was larger, heavier, and more powerful, but unmistakably inspired by the bazooka. Meanwhile, the Americans were putting their own invention to the test once again. Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily in July 1943, marked the bazooka's first true trial against German armor. With the improved M1A1 model and upgraded rockets, U.S. paratroopers demonstrated just how effective the weapon could be. At Biscari, troopers from the 82nd Airborne made a shot that became legend, a rocket that entered a Tiger tank directly through its driver's vision slit. The Tiger was one of the most feared machines of the war, and German diaries later admitted that enemy infantry now possessed rockets capable of destroying armor from 100 to 150 meters away. Colonel James Gavin of the 505 Parachute Infantry wrote that the bazooka had given his men something intangible yet vital: confidence. In Sicily alone, 17 German tanks were knocked out by bazooka fire. The terrifying helplessness that infantry once felt when tanks appeared, the so-called tank panic, began to fade. As the fighting moved into Italy, the bazooka became more than just an anti-tank weapon. Soldiers learned it could blast through walls, bunkers, and fortified houses. In Ortona, Canadian troops used it to punch holes through stone walls, moving from building to building while avoiding deadly street fighting. By early 1944, every U.S. infantry battalion carried at least 24 launchers. German commanders realized that tanks could no longer operate independently. New directives ordered armor never to advance into towns without infantry support and to avoid buildings within 100 meters unless cleared. Crews began welding spare track links, sandbags, and even concrete to their hulls in a desperate attempt at extra protection. The bazooka had changed everything. By June 1944, as Allied troops prepared to storm the beaches of Normandy, thousands of bazooka teams stood ready. It was no longer an experimental weapon. It was standard issue, a symbol of American adaptability and ingenuity. When the landings began on June 6, 1944, thousands of bazookas came ashore with the first assault waves. In the tangled hedgerows of Normandy, where visibility was short and danger constant, they became indispensable. American after-action reports credited bazookas with destroying 12% of all German tanks lost in the U.S. sector during the first 6 weeks after D-Day. Cheap, portable, and devastating, they gave small units the power to stand up to steel giants. Infantrymen who once hid from approaching armor now stalked it. They learned to move in pairs, one man carrying rockets, the other the launcher, slipping between hedgerows, waiting for the moment when a tank's flank was exposed. With a hiss and flash, an $8 rocket could destroy a machine worth thousands of Reichsmarks. By late summer, bazookas had become as common as rifles or machine guns. They were tools of survival, tools of courage, and, increasingly, tools of improvisation. Soldiers used them not only against tanks, but against bunkers, machine gun nests, and fortified buildings. Engineers even found ways to mount them on jeeps, boats, and aircraft. When winter descended and the Battle of the Bulge erupted in December 1944, the bazooka faced its toughest trial yet. The cold froze batteries, warped rockets, and turned men into ice. Yet even under those brutal conditions, bazookas destroyed or disabled nearly 90 German armored vehicles. Soldiers learned to keep rockets under their coats to prevent misfires, waiting in silence as enemy tanks rumbled closer. One sergeant reported striking a Panther's engine deck from 75 yards, forcing the crew to abandon it. Across the Ardennes, stories like his multiplied. Small groups of infantry halting the advance of entire armored columns. The bazooka had become the equalizer of the battlefield, and it wasn't only ground troops who wielded it. Major Charles Carpenter, a U.S. Army pilot flying the tiny L-4 Grasshopper observation plane, mounted 6 bazookas beneath his wings. With them, he hunted German armor from the sky, swooping low to unleash rockets before darting away. His exploits earned him the nickname Bazooka Charlie, and his improvised flying tank buster became legendary. By the war's end, America had produced nearly 500,000 launchers and over 15 million rockets. The numbers were staggering. For the cost of a single Sherman tank, the U.S. Army could equip thousands of infantrymen with bazookas and enough ammunition to stop a battalion of panzers, German tankers, whose machines cost tens of thousands of Reichsmarks, now feared an invisible cheap weapon carried by 19-year-old soldiers hiding in hedges and rubble. Post-war studies confirmed what soldiers already knew. 12% of all German tanks destroyed in the European theater fell to bazookas. But the real impact went beyond numbers. German diaries revealed that many crews abandoned their vehicles not after being hit, but merely upon hearing that bazooka teams were nearby. Fear had become a weapon in itself. Blitzkrieg, the lightning war that had terrorized Europe in 1940, had been slowed, then stopped, by simple steel tubes in the hands of citizen soldiers. The myth of tank invincibility was over. No longer could armor drive unopposed through enemy lines. Every hedgerow, every window, every pile of rubble could hide a man with a rocket launcher. The bazooka's legacy stretched far beyond Europe. In the Pacific, Marines quickly adapted it to their brutal island warfare. At Tarawa, Saipan, and Peleliu, bazookas blasted through Japanese pillboxes and caves. At Iwo Jima alone, nearly 2,000 rockets were fired, many tipped with white phosphorus to burn out entrenched defenders. Against stone, concrete, and steel, the bazooka proved its worth again and again. In Korea, the old M1 struggled against Soviet-built T-34s, its warhead too small, its rocket too weak. But the new 3.5-inch Super Bazooka restored the balance. With greater range and power, it could penetrate the T-34's armor with ease. Once again, the simple tube had evolved, and once again, it gave the American infantrymen confidence in the face of enemy armor. From there, its influence spread around the world. The Soviet RPG series, the British Law, the Swedish Carl Gustaf, all were direct descendants of the American design. The concept of the man-portable rocket launcher revolutionized infantry warfare, making every soldier a potential tank killer. Yet beyond its military impact, the bazooka became a symbol of something larger: industrial democracy in wartime. Born from junk metal, electrical tape, and a coat hanger, it embodied the American genius for practicality. It could be built in hours, taught in minutes, and carried anywhere. It didn't rely on elite craftsmanship or expensive materials. Just mass production, ingenuity, and trust in the ordinary soldier. German engineers prided themselves on masterpieces like the Tiger tank, powerful, precise, but few in number. The bazooka proved that quantity, simplicity, and adaptability could defeat complexity. 1,000 cheap launchers could outmatch a handful of technological marvels. The weapon's success was a triumph, not only of design, but of philosophy. By the war's final months, even German commanders admitted the truth. The American rocket launcher had ended the independence of the tank. No longer could armor roll forward unescorted. Orders now demanded that tanks advance only with infantry cover and never approach buildings or ruins without support. The age of the unstoppable tank was over. Every road, every forest, every shadow might conceal a man with a bazooka. And so, Blitzkrieg, that roaring storm of steel that once swept across Europe, was brought to a halt not by other tanks, not by massive artillery, but by the simplest of weapons: a hollow tube, a handful of wires, and the courage of the men who carried it.
They had never seen one before November 8th, 1942, on the beaches of North Africa. Yet that day, in the surf and chaos of Operation Torch, they unknowingly carried the future of infantry warfare. That steel tube, cheap, crude, and devastating, helped bring down the Third Reich one rocket at a time.